Mitt Romney faces the most important night of his political life in Denver as he squares off in his first political debate against Jim Lehrer with moderator Barack Obama. I promise you I'm not joking, but I am Steve Green. This is Trifecta, and here to show you how Romney needs to answer the loaded questions he'll get. We have Bill Whittle as Mitt Romney and Scott Ott as Mitt Romney. Gents, to set this up, I want to show you George Stephanopoulos from a GOP primary debate earlier this year. Watch these clips.
Governor Romney, do you believe that states have the right to ban contraception, or is that trumped by a constitutional right to privacy? I'm asking you, do you believe that states have that right or not? But you accept the Supreme Court decision finding a right to privacy in the Constitution. You've given two answers to the question. Do you believe that the Supreme Court should overturn it or not?
Poor Romney there. He looked like Gomer Pyle asked to do long division in his head. With one question, and the former, and I use the term former loosely, Democratic operative, set up the entire narrative for the war on women for the White House at a time when nobody on the GOP side was talking about birth control, this non-issue. Bill, so I'll give you the first question. Governor Romney, you're promising tax cuts and financial deregulation, the same policies which led to exploding deficits and a collapsed economy. How are your proposals any different from George Bush's policies?
Pass. No, my policies are, we're not, you may have noticed, Mr. Stephanopoulos, Mr. Lehrer, that George Bush is not on the podium up here tonight. Actually, it's just myself and Mr. Barack Obama, so why don't we compare my policies to Mr. Obama's? Utter failure of economic leadership, utter failure to understand the basics of economics. Worst job record since the Great Depression, worst economic growth since the Great Depression. We can go on and on with those statistics. But why don't we just look at one little example where President Obama's decided that we can't buy energy supplies from our best friend in the whole wide world, Canada, ostensibly on the grounds of environmental reasons. So Canada will not be selling the oil to their best friend in the world, the United States, who will burn it cleanly. Instead, they're selling their oil to the Chinese, who are our strategic enemies, and who will burn it filthily. Now, that tells me that the president doesn't understand that oil is a commodity, that if we don't buy it, that it's just going to stay in the earth. These fundamental issues are the kind of things that we really need to be talking about, because that's why the economy is not turning over. And again, I hate to disappoint you, Jim, but President Bush has been out of office for 4 years now. We need to talk about the guy who has been in office for 4 years.
Good answer, Governor. All right, Scott, well, not that Jim Lehrer would say that. Scott, your turn. Mr. Romney, American voters again and again approve of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act once they learn it allows them to keep their grown children on their insurance and outlaws denial of coverage for pre-existing conditions. Why would you deny Americans these protections?
Well, Jim, I wonder what the American people think about the other 2,699 pages of the Affordable Care and Patient Protection Act, rather than just those two little elements that you pulled out and you focus on every time this story comes up in the mainstream media. How about looking into the details of the taxation that will slam companies that create medical devices? How about looking into the details of the way that these healthcare exchanges will actually function? Why haven't we seen a single piece in the media that actually digs into the functionality of what this all means to people? The reality is that you want universal health care. You and your president want universal health care, and we don't need that. American people don't want that, and they're not willing to sacrifice a few little things that they like in order to get a boatload of things that they don't.
Bill? Oh, yes, you had something?
No, I was just going, huzzah. I like that, Mitt Romney. I like the cut of his jib.
We should all do that. I want to be doing that on Wednesday night. All right, Bill, Mr. Romney, your Medicaid reform plan would force seniors to pay $6,000 a year more than they do today. Why are you cutting taxes for the wealthiest Americans and increasing the burden for seniors on fixed incomes?
First of all, I'm doing no such thing. Secondly, let's not forget ourselves if we're going to be talking about Social Security and Medicare. It's the Barack Obama administration that's pulled $750 billion out of Medicare in order to fund this abomination called Obamacare that nobody wants, despite your previous question. Obamacare is one of the most unpopular pieces of legislation in the history of this country, which is why it had to be rammed down our throat using all kinds of special procedures on the part of Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, and why Barack Obama didn't get in front of that legislation, but rather got behind it. Now, to your question about having seniors and having the rich pay a larger or get a larger tax break, this might be difficult for you to understand, Jim, but I'm going to go ahead and try and explain it to you anyway. If people pay a very large slice of the pie, in other words, if the top 1% of income earners pay 36% of the total income taxes, then any across-the-board tax rates that apply to the entire pie will mean that they will pay a somewhat larger or will receive a somewhat larger tax cut. But it doesn't mean it's just a tax cut for the rich. It means it's a tax cut for everybody. The richer people, too. The difference between rich people and poor people is when rich people get to keep more of their money, they do things like invest in new companies and buy new trucks and buy new factories and hire new people and things that are good for everybody. Good for everybody. So it's important that we understand the fundamentals of economics if we're going to talk about economics. And I think the president really should spend a little more time with you in the back room before we go on next time, because it's these fundamental things about big pies and little pies that really make the difference in terms of having an economy that's growing or an economy that's shrinking.
And who doesn't love pie? All right, Scott, last one. As governor of Massachusetts, you worked with Democrats to pass a health care law just like President Obama's. You were in favor of abortion rights and birth control, and your state was 47th in job creation. So how can members of your own party trust you on conservative issues, and why should American voters believe that you can create jobs?
Well, it's funny, Mr. Lehrer, you want to have it both ways. On the one hand, you say you want bipartisanship. On the other hand, you say you don't want a guy who somehow managed to work with Democrats in one of the most liberal states in the union and be a Republican governor. I simply don't understand how you can have it both ways. The fact that I was able to get done what I did in Massachusetts is phenomenal. The fact that I was able to eliminate budget deficits without raising taxes and to be able to make that government more efficient and effective apparently escaped your notice. Do I think that the so-called Romney care is a good idea for the rest of the country? No. In fact, our federalist system is designed so that we can experiment with things in individual states, see how they work out, and if other states wish to adopt them, that's fine. But it shouldn't be concentrated and centralized by a command and control federal government. Thank you.
Wow, I would love it if somebody would forward this video to somebody in the Romney campaign. All right, folks, but there is one last question that I didn't give to Scott or to Bill. Instead, I want you to take on the part of Mitt Romney and answer this one as best you're able. Might be the first question he gets on Wednesday night. Governor, did you start using your magic underwear to enslave women to their reproductive organs so that seniors can eat dog food in the streets while young people go without health insurance to pay for new wars in the Middle East we can't win just so you can distract people from noticing you quit beating your wife with a dog kennel on the roof of your car? Answer that one. For PJTV, I'm Jim Lehrer.